go. Hi, my name's Peggy Reed, and I'm your hostess with the mostest. This is Broomfield Conversation, and our guest tonight is Ian Silverii. Before we get started with Ian, I've got a couple of slides to show y'all. The first one is some future Broomfield events. On September 3rd, we're going to be talking about the citizen requirement for voting. This is a ballot measure that is about a change in the language that I think is honestly a get out the vote ploy is what I think, but I guess I can't say that. But we're going to hear all about it from the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition. On September 10th is our monthly meeting, and I'm pretty excited about this. Joe Neguse will be with us. And then we have Carol Hedges from the Colorado Fiscal Institute to talk about the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment at the state level. We'll also have our Mayor Pro Tem, Guyleen, here to talk about the Broomfield Gallagher Amendment that will also be a ballot measure. On September 24th, we've got two people to talk about healthcare ballot initiatives, paid family medical leave. This just made the ballot just today. And then we also have an initiative around abortion and prohibiting it after 22 weeks. In terms of our meeting today, we've got a chat window, and it's there for you to ask questions of our guests. And so in order to see that chat window, it's on the bottom of the screen, and you click it and it will open. And Gary will be monitoring the chat room and get those questions to our speakers tonight. Now we're going to talk about money. Y'all, we need money. And we particularly need money this year because it's a really important election. And because of COVID, we're having to get out the vote differently. And a lot of it has to do with our voter's guide and what we do called vote notes. It's expensive to create literature and mail it. So I'd like to really encourage you to donate to the Broomfield County Democrats. To do that, you can use that QR code on the slide, or you can go to the URL. So give us money, please. We will use it well. And now I want to introduce Ian. I'm not going to read the slide because I think y'all can read it. I'm just going to tell you a story about Ian, and I hope I'm making him nervous right now.
A little bit.
Perfect. So I first heard Ian at Democratic Women of Boulder County, and he was just a terrific speaker. And I was so impressed. I asked him to come speak at the Broomfield County Democrats during the midterm elections. And he said yes. And again, it was awesome. So then I asked him again for this election to be one of our Broomfield conversations, and he's kind of hard to get. We asked in June, we negotiated, and so it's a big deal to get Ian Silverii. So I'm very glad he's here, and I want to turn it over to him.
Well, thanks so much, Peggy. I really appreciate it. And I especially appreciate the fact that I know that you all kind of switched the time for me. I was supposed to come at 7, but because I had a previous commitment, that was something that actually occurred after we set this time, but y'all were amazing and flexible, and I sincerely really appreciated it. I made a deal with myself a long time ago, actually the day after the 2016 election, that if for some reason somebody or a group of people, no matter how big, no matter how small, no matter where they were, and this was when we could see each other in real life, asked me to come talk, I would make time to do it. Democratic women of Boulder County are amazing. Broomfield Dems are amazing. I'm always happy to come talk to y'all, whether it's in person or in this weird box over here. I do want to introduce my friend who I brought with me to sort of make up for the time change, though. Congressman Jason Crow is over here, and I want to hand the mic over to him, but I have like a short little, I wrote like a 7-paragraph intro for you because you're just like completely ridiculous. But the short version of it is that Congressman Crow was in the 82nd Airborne Division. He was an Army Ranger, 2 tours in Afghanistan, 2 tours in Iraq, unseated Mike Kaufman in 2018 in an 11-point rout, whereas we could not win that seat for the last decade, and we're losing it by 8 points every year. So he took a seat that we were losing by 8 and won it by 11. That's a 19-point swing, which is just completely unheard of. He grew up in a rural town, went to DU Law School, practiced law for a while, ran for Congress. In 2012, he actually spoke at the Democratic National Convention and made a speech about don't ask, don't tell, and why President Obama needed to get rid of that back in 2012, which was still like not quite popular territory yet. So like, good on you for being a little involved in that issue before most of the party. And most recently, you probably saw Congressman Crow was one of the House impeachment managers, where he just did an unbelievable job prosecuting this terrible human being who will not be president for very much longer. Anyway, I could say a lot more. Jason's working really hard right now on lowering the cost of prescription drugs, making sure every vote counts, and making sure that people and businesses have some relief from the nightmare of the virus. But I just want to hand it over to Congressman Jason Crow, my friend from the 6th Congressional District. Give him a clap or a wave of your hands or hit one of those reaction emojis or whatever. Jason.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, Broomfield Dems. It's good to be with you. I won't take a lot of time because I want to make sure that Ian has an opportunity to run through his presentation. But if it makes you feel any better, it has taken me far longer than since June to connect with Ian Silverii. So you're ahead of me in terms of getting on his dance card. That's how popular he is. But a wonderful guy and a great progressive leader. So thank you, Peggy, for your leadership. Kathy, for your leadership as well. And a shout out to Sally Bocella for jumping into the fray. I have a special place in my heart for people taking on tough races, right? Taking on, those races that, you'll campaign, Sally and everybody else. You guys know what I'm talking about. You'll campaign for months and people will say, oh, this is not winnable and you can't win it. Now, kind of my running joke is every race is unwinnable until you win it by 11 points, right? And I spent the first 9 months of my campaign calling, grinding it out, raising money, going to events, having people hang up on me, smirk at me until we got it done. So I sympathize with you, Sally. Just keep at it, believe in yourself, and keep rolling, and we'll have your back. Special shout out there. So real quick, I just wanted to come on real quick and talk to you about the electoral environment right now and some of the things we're doing in CD6 so we can all kind of learn from each other and best practices throughout the state. Number one, I think this is going to be much tougher on the presidential side and the Senate side than some people think. I'm actually concerned about overconfidence and complacency now. In some circles, I've seen and heard the same mentality that we've heard in the lead up to 2016, where we were basically measuring the drapes in the Oval Office and then we lose. So I've got to say it. This is going to be a photo finish, I believe, and we have to run through the tape. Number two, it's challenging because we have a president who doesn't believe in any of our rule of law and democracy and norms, and he will do anything and everything possible to sabotage this election. I believe that. We're already seeing it happen. So the deck is stacked against us here, that we have a president that's willing to use the full power of the presidency to do it. Number three, I don't believe the polling. And my pollsters and my data friends are going to hate me for saying this, but I've been pounding the table. I don't think we know how to poll yet in the era of Donald Trump. I think that, a lot of his voters, his hardcore base are lower propensity voters. They're not people that we're able to really effectively capture in polls. A lot of them are not folks that spend 15 minutes on a pollster's telephone call. So I don't believe it. And I think that we underpoll his base, and particularly in places of the upper Midwest where the keys to this election go. And fourth, the traditional advantage that we have as Democrats in October, our get out the vote, our field operation, we're not going to have it in the same way that we normally do. You know, in 2018, we had the mega canvases across Colorado and across the 6th district, where we'd go show up and, you know, 600-700 people were packing a high school gym in Aurora and Littleton, and we'd fan out and knock 20,000 doors in a day, right? That's going to look really different. We're not going to have as much of that advantage. So it means we have to get going earlier. We have to be more innovative and creative. We need more money earlier, as Peggy said, so we can make investments in digital and all these other remote and digital and virtual tools that take longer to implement. And so we have to back our timeline up. So those are the challenges. How do we get it done? I'm a big believer in my district in what I call 360 campaigning. This idea that you raise the water level in the harbor and all the boats go up. So we work really closely with our county commission races, our city council races, our state house, our state senate races. We do joint canvasses, phone banks all the time, constantly on all of our events. The question for our field team is, who can we integrate into this event? Who can we get involved? Because every time a candidate does a solo event, that's a missed opportunity, right? Because, you know, we have in any given district, whatever it is, whether it's school board, city council, state house, congressional, there's 3, 4, 5 political jurisdictions that overlap with that district, right? So you always have to be thinking, how can we integrate everybody that represents that block, that precinct, that city into a particular event? So we maximize our opportunity. That's 360 campaigning, and we got to be doing it as Democrats across the state and across all of our cities and counties. The second is staying focused on the kitchen table issues. Now, this is a hard one because we always want to respond to what Donald Trump is doing, right? Because he does such terrible things all the time. And we feel like we feel compelled to stand up. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we have to respond because we can't allow things to become normalized, right? We're fighting this normalization of our democracy and norms. We got to push back, but we don't have to swing at every pitch, right? Donald Trump is in some cases his worst enemy. And his strategy is to keep us responding to him all of the time so we can't get our message across. So I harp on this whenever I talk to anybody who will listen. We got to spend the majority of our time talking about our kitchen table issues, our good governance, and what we're going to be as the adults in the room, and not just responding to Donald Trump. And that's a tough balance to strike. But at the end of the day, people are looking for someone who's going to deliver. They're looking for the adult in the room. And we are that party. We will be those candidates. So we have to make sure we're getting our message across. So that's all I wanted to talk about. You know, happy to take any questions. And Ian, I know this is your show here, but I appreciate the time, and it's good to meet you all, and look forward to fighting with you all.
Well, we're super happy to have you, Congressman. Thanks for joining us. If anybody has a question, you can feel free to just take yourself off mute and ask it, or pop it in the chat. That's how I'll ask you to do it when it's time for my little presentation. But until then, if you have a question for Congressman Crow, please don't be shy.
Well, this is Kathy, and I don't have a question specifically for you, Senator Crow, but I want to thank you very much. The 360-degree campaigning is sort of what we've been doing, and I love that you've put it into nice little compact bullets. I'm going to use that if that's okay.
Absolutely. There's no pride of authorship here. Use it.
We will
own it.
So thank you very much, and thank you for everything you're doing. We are very, very proud to have you representing Colorado.
And I would be remiss, I missed something here in terms of your representation. You guys are so well served with my good friend and buddy, Joe Neguse, who has done an amazing job in Congress, an amazing job for the 2nd District, for Broomfield. You guys are very fortunate. You have one of the best in Congress for sure. I've known him for a very long time. We practiced law together for 5 years. We started as law clerks together. We actually were interns together in Governor Bill Ritter's legal office in 2006. So we go way back. I know his character and his heart, and he's just one of my closest friends. So you guys are very fortunate.
That's really good to hear. And I misspoke calling you senator. I guess it's aspirational. Um,
I'll
thank you.
take the upgrade. That's fine.
So would we. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, too. It's quite a pleasure.
So we know Congressman Crow has to get going to the Arapahoe County Dems dinner, but we can take another question. Is that all right, Patty Sullivan?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. The Carbon Dividend Act, right now, the Denver Post reported today that we should build safe rooms in our house. A room where we have an air filter because the air quality is so bad that we shouldn't go outside. If we inhale the air, we shouldn't exhale it because it doesn't exhale. The danger does not exhale. So we're being told, even if we're healthy, to stay indoors in the summer. I find this completely pathetic and unacceptable. I will not tolerate it. I want us to do everything we can to get that Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act passed as soon as possible. And I was wondering where you stand on that.
Yeah, so if that's the same one, I'm on a carbon dividend bill, and I have to look at the House HR number of that because there's a couple of different bills and proposals floating out there. But I am on one of those bills, if that's the one you're talking about, and I think it is. I'm also on the HR 9. I'm also on the 100% clean energy bill. I support Vice President Biden's 100% goal by at least 2035. And I actually am the co-chair of an infrastructure task force in Congress to make to figure out how we make really large investments in energy infrastructure, because we have to move to 100%. We've got to do it really quick. We're out of time. That's what the data show us. We are out of time. Climate change is on us. It's not a future thing. It's here. It's now in the air we breathe, the fires, the floods, everything else.
We're also having fracking, and that is in our temps every year. 2012 was a record, and we had bad wildfire. 2020 is on par for a record temperature now, past the 2012, and we're having bad wildfire. We're knocking out our infrastructure, our water treatment plants. People are complaining about high water bills. It's affecting, everything, our whole way of life.
Absolutely. So the one of the things we have to do, and the reason I was going to mention infrastructure is that's the long pole in the tent is infrastructure, right? We can't just flip a switch and have clean energy tomorrow. We have to build these massive solar arrays, the wind farms, and then we have to have the capacity to transport the energy from where the sun is shining and where the wind is blowing to where it's not. Right now, we do not have a unified energy infrastructure grid. We don't have a tied together grid. So we have to build that grid to transport that energy, to make that transition to clean energy. And that takes time. That's going to take a decade to actually build the grid, because one of the challenges we have is we have to go through the environmental permitting process. There are environmental laws to protect critical habitat and critical species that you have to go through those permitting processes to actually build those transmission lines through that habitat. So we have to start that process now so that we do it the right way and we're protecting critical habitat and species. But we're starting that process of building the infrastructure so we can make that transition. And we got to do it really fast.
And I know that Patty didn't set you up for this, Congressman, but the bill she linked to in her chat there, the Energy Innovation Act, is HR 763, of which you are one of the co-sponsors. So
yeah,
you've got Jason on there already, and just spread the word to the rest of the delegation. Joe's on there too, no surprise. And so is Ed, it looks like, and I'm sure Diana is as well. No, you got to get Diana on that bill. So 3 out of our 4 Democrats are already co-sponsors of this one that you're putting out there, Patty. Thank you for raising that. It's a really important point.
I'm really glad we got to talk about that. And Congressman Crow, I'm very grateful that you could make it tonight and make Ian look good. That's always a good goal. So I'd like to turn it over to Ian.
Thanks all. I'm going to sign off. Thank you. Good to talk with you all.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Peggy.
So let's go, Ian.
Let's do it. So Peggy asked me to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to rearrange some windows over here real quick. 3 things I want to talk about is, like, she's not in the room, Sally over here, who's running for Senate District 23, which is an absolutely critical seat to make sure the Democrats keep and expand the majority in the state Senate so we can keep doing things like tackling climate change at the state level. Number 2, how to do GOTV, voter contact, and campaign in the world of COVID. I'm obviously not an expert because nobody is, but we are trying some things at Progress Now that I hope you all can adopt and take and make your own. Some tools that we found that are pretty great, and some, tactics and technology that I think is probably transferable to the party as well. The ballot initiatives that are on statewide ballots this year are unbelievable. There are already 7 of them, 8 actually as of today, that have qualified. And like every one of them is important and confusing all at the same time. So I really want to go through a bunch of those. And then I want to talk a little bit about the US Senate race and then like answer questions and whatnot. So if you have a question while I'm talking, I'm going to have the chat window up right over here. Please feel free to just like type them in there. If it's relevant to what I'm saying, I'll address it as I'm talking. And if not, I'll just get to it at the end. Does that sound okay?
Great.
Fantastic. Very good. So first and foremost, Senate District 23. Now, this is a district that Jason said it best. I mean, it's out of reach until you win it, right? It's unwinnable until you win it by 11 points. And insofar as like an 11-point victory would be stunning, it's certainly in play, right? There's a couple of reasons why I think Senate District 23 is absolutely on the target list this year, and why I think that the Broomfield County Democrats specifically should join up with your friends in Weld County and do everything you can to get Sally elected to the state Senate. The first reason is the raw numbers, right? If you look at the district in 2016, it had 24% Democratic registration, 37% Republican registration, and 38% unaffiliated registration. 4 short years later, Democrats went down 1 point to 23, Republicans went down 3 points to 33, but unaffiliated ticked up to 42%. So if Sally wins every single Democratic vote, which I actually believe that she can and will, because Democrats are fired up and ready to get rid of Trump, and we are voting up and down the ballot this year. If she's able to win half the unaffiliated and 10% of the Republicans, that's the math. She can win this race. And here's why I think it's going to work in her favor. There's a Libertarian on the ballot this year in Senate District 23. I was the State House Caucus Director from 2010 to 2014, along with my buddy Andy. And it was our job to maintain and expand the majority in the State House. Now, there were 2 terrible years built into there. 2010, where we lost the State House by 1 seat that was decided by 197 votes. And 2014, which was the awful red wave where we lost the state Senate and Senator Udall lost the seat to you-know-who. 2012 was in between there, and it was a pretty good year. It wasn't a wave year by any stretch of the imagination, not like 2018, not like we've seen. But I think 2018 is sort of like the backwards, like the inverse mirror image of 2014. And 2020 is going to be like the backwards 2010, which means that 2020 is the best electorate Democrats will have had in Colorado, probably in the state's history, to say nothing of like recent electoral history with the maps drawn the way they are. This is the last year Senate District 23 is going to look this way. We're entering into redistricting cycle where the Independent Redistricting and Reapportionment Commission is going to meet, and we have no idea what's going to happen here because we passed this amendment Y and Z, which changed the makeup of the redistricting process in Colorado in 2018. And ever since then, the Independent Commission is actually forming right now. Generally speaking, you have to be like an unaffiliated voter for 5 years, and I don't think anybody on this call qualifies because I think you're all Democrats. But the commission is created in such a way that it doesn't protect incumbents. It has a lot more to do with protecting what are called communities of interest and competitiveness and this sort of thing than it does preserving existing political boundaries. So who knows, right? The good news is that right now Democrats have a 2-seat majority in the state Senate. The 2 seats that they are defending are Jeff Bridges in Arapahoe County and Rachel Zenzinger in Jefferson County. Sally is absolutely one of the pickup seats that they can go for in order to expand that majority. And we have to do it. You know why? Because 2022 is just around the corner. And if we are successful in 2020 and win everything up and down the ticket across the board, take the US Senate, take the White House, keep the US House, if all our dreams come true, 2022 is going to be a real bad year. It always works like that. American politics works in cycles where backlash happens, especially Republicans do very, very well in backlash midterms because, unfortunately, progressives and Democrats tend not to vote when there's not a presidential candidate on the ticket unless it's a year like 2018 or 2006 where there's a big old backlash against the current sitting Republican incumbent president like Bush in 06 and Trump in 2018. So I believe very, very strongly that 2020 is going to be the best year to be a Democrat running for any seat in Colorado. And Sally is running for one of the admittedly like stretch districts, but it is completely within reach. But it's going to come down to all the things that everyone on this call does. So let's talk a little bit about her opponent. Barbara Kirkmeyer is a current Weld County commissioner who is not very well liked up there. Quite frankly, she's pretty divisive. People either love her or they hate her, and I think it's pretty evenly split. She got out of a primary with a guy named Rupert Parchment III, which despite having an awesome name, did lose pretty handily to her. However, Parchment was supported by Rocky Mountain gun owners. And if you know anything about the gun lobby and the right-wing extremists in Colorado, you know that RMGO has quite a big amount of influence and kind of a stranglehold on that part of the party. They might decide that Kirkmeyer is a rhino, and then they have this libertarian to vote for instead. So if Sally's going to win, it's going to be because she works her tail off. The year is really good. Everyone on this call gets every single one of their friends to work their tails off for her too. Enough Republicans either don't vote or get distracted and decide to defect and go vote for the Libertarian. And Kirkmeyer is going to take this seat for granted. This is something that we know. She thinks she earned this. She thinks she won it in the primary, right? That's not true. This is absolutely up for grabs, and it is Sally's race to win. So I hope that every single one of you on this call takes a little bit of time to volunteer for Sally, donate if you can, and do whatever you can to help her get elected. I know this is off script a little bit, Peggy, but if I could just turn it over to Sally for 1 minute to ask her what's the best way for everybody to get involved in her campaign so we can make sure we flip SC23, is that okay?
That's great.
Sally, please just tell us where to go website, what you need from volunteers, what's the best thing they can do to help out right now.
Actually, I gotta go. I'm so sorry. I have a meet and greet at literally 6:30. Becky's on here, my campaign manager. I was just saying that. She will be able to give you everything that we need and what we're actually been doing so that you guys stay pumped to stay with us and get your friends on board if they're not already on board.
That's great. Go meet and go greet, and we will talk to Becky.
Thank you
so
Ian,
much.
for
Good luck
that
with your
amazing
event tonight.
support.
You bet. Go fight, win.
Bye.
Becky, can you tell us a little bit about how they can get involved? Awesome.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. And Ian, thank you so much. You're always such a great speaker. I don't know, like I've seen you speak so many times. Every single time, you always have my attention. You're so good at what you do. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So Sally's race, yeah, we do need all the help we can get. And it's been amazing. We've had an outpouring of support. Basically, my full-time job right now is giving people marching orders to go do something. So I really love that. It's the greatest problem to have. And you guys have all been great so far. I'll go ahead and put in the chat the link to sign up to and my email. If you want to just reach out to me by email first, say, you know, I have experience phone banking, I'm ready to go. That's the fastest. It saves me a couple steps. That's great. So we have right now, we have phone banking, we have texting, which a lot of volunteers really like, and I moderate that in case there are some tough conversations that I need to jump into. And we have run out of postcards again because you guys are doing so many of them, which is great. And our lit should be here no later than next Monday, so we can do some no contact literature drops at people's doors. And it's a great, I mean, while we're not knocking doors at this moment, because we want to make sure that we have a clear distinction where Barbara Kirkmeyer does not care about the health and safety of her constituents. Sally does. I mean, Sally really wants to make sure that we are not a part of the problem in any way, shape, or form. We're keeping everyone safe. So we'll do some no contact literature drops for now. And sometimes you might have an opportunity to talk to somebody that's out in their yard, especially as it starts to cool down, people will be out doing their yard work. But yeah, so those are all the opportunities. I'll put my email in the chat so y'all can email me. And yeah, I mean, this is the way we're gonna win this, is this grassroots, getting out there, talking to our folks and making those calls. And to be perfectly honest with y'all, I'm not gonna be putting you in Broomfield at first because we've got Broomfield. We like Broomfield, it's a blue area, we're good there. We've gotta talk to those folks in Weld County. And sometimes those are difficult conversations, but I'm here all the time. If you need to talk through something, if you need to defer a conversation to me that I can take over for you, and we will check in regularly, make sure that, you know, nobody's being too rough, because we do get some MAGA responses, and our answer to that is, hey, you know what, we all want to improve our community. We just have different ways of doing it, but we appreciate you and have a great day. And you would not believe how many people actually come around and come back to a conversation where they're open-minded. which is the most we can hope for with some of our, hardcore Weld County folks. So I'm here. I'll put that in the chat. I'll turn it back over to Ian. And if anybody has any questions or anything, I'm here all the time. Thanks, Hal.
Thank you so much, Becky. We're super psyched that you were able to join us and that Sally was here too. Everybody take a look at the chat. Make sure you get Becky's information, email address, and the website so you can go and help sign up for volunteer shifts. This is the best thing you can do with split the legislative district. I'm not kidding. Like Brittany, ran for the state house for the first time, my wife, in 2012. And it was like a crazy, weird, scary, horrible experience. She was up against somebody with a lot more connections, who was a lot older, who had kids. Everybody looked at Brittany like she was some little girl. Where's your roller skates? Are you sure you can even vote? Why are you running for office? But hard work, determination, and a ton of volunteer support. And she ended up beating the pants off that lady. She won by almost 9 points that year in her first race and has just increased the margins ever since. So Becky just put the info in the chat there. Peggy, I don't know if you had something else to say, or else I was just going to jump into the next thing here on the agenda.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do
great.
GOTV. Yeah.
So it's an awesome transition that Becky gave me here, because now we're going to talk a little bit about strategy and tactics and what we can do to make the difference here. Like she said, texting. Texting is so fun. It's not like you have to sit there with your phone and like use your little thumbs or your fingers for like an hour or 5 or 6 at night. It's something that I do when we're just like sitting around watching TV or like watching a movie at night and like reading to the baby. It's on your laptop, it's on your computer. So there are all sorts of apps, Hustle, Relay. We use one at Progress Now called Spoke. Basically what happens is you have to, in order to be compliant with the FCC, you can't just use an automated text message system to blast out like whatever text to 1 million people and say, call it good. You actually have to send them yourself. So what happens is you log on to these pieces of software. It's not, you have to download anything. It's all on a website somewhere. It's just like Facebook. Like it's just, you go to a link, it takes you to a page, and you have a little intro script, and you basically just bang the space bar or the return button for a while. And every time you hit it, it sends out a text to a real voter. And these are voters who we know the phone number is good typically. They're in the target universe, so the kind of folks you want to talk to. Are they all going to be enthusiastic Sally supporters at first? Of course not. But that's why you're texting them, right? Quite frankly, I was a little skeptical of this tactic when I first got introduced to it in 2018, because I was like, no one's going to answer a random text message from some number they never heard of. The weirdest thing in the world, a side effect of COVID, people are actually answering those now. They're answering polls in higher amounts, they're answering random phone numbers in higher amounts, and they're even answering text messages in higher amounts. So it's a numbers game. You're not going to get somebody to respond to every single text you send, and that's okay. Because if you send 10,000 texts and you talk to 100 people and you get 50 of them to vote for Sally, you've done an amazing thing that night. And quite frankly, you've done better than you could have at the doors over the same amount of time. Because the time it takes you to go from one door to another and get the lid out and get your clipboard out and write the thing or type in the app, that's all a lot of time wasted. That doesn't happen in the text game anymore. So you can send out thousands and thousands and thousands of text messages and have real conversations with voters. The best part about working in Sally's race is that every one of you lives in the district. So these are your neighbors. Even if they live in Weld County and you live in Broomfield, it doesn't matter, because the fact is you share something in common with them. You are in the same state Senate district, which means you get to decide who your representative is together. So I think that it's going to be an incredibly powerful tool right now in COVID land for us to be able to contact voters, because just like Becky said, we're not in the business of going out there and putting people's lives in danger to win a political campaign. I mean, the stakes couldn't possibly be higher, but there's nothing more important than making sure everyone is safe and healthy out there, right? So I'm not putting anybody on the doors this year for the millions of campaigns we're working on. We're doing everything with phones and text and digital marketing campaigns. When you talk about digital, people like to throw that term out and say like, oh, just do digital. What does that mean? Well, for volunteers, there's not a ton you can do digitally, quite frankly, unless there are a couple of different tools available. There's one called Outreach Circle. These things are called relational organizing tools. And basically what they do is give you the ability to go through your own contact list and talk to your own neighbors who are in whatever district you're talking about. So if you have friends in Colorado, you can always talk about John Hickenlooper or Cory Gardner. If you have friends in Senate District 23, you can always talk about Sally. And if you have, I mean, let's face it, Joe Neguse not going to face a super competitive race this year. So like, we're going to have to let him coast a little bit, because we got 2 incredibly important and competitive races that you are all going to be key to: Sally Senate District And well, Matt Gray's House district used to be like one of the most competitive districts when now Lieutenant Governor, but then State Representative Diane Primavera. Man, Broomfield really does turn out the stars, don't they? Was the seat. We actually, Diane lost her seat in 2010 in that horrible election, and that cost us the majority. She lost that race by less than 500 votes. So we don't take Senate or House District 33 for granted either, but Matt's done a great job putting that thing pretty far out of reach. You can work for Sally and Matt at the same time, and of course, John Hickenlooper. Look, plenty of us voted for Andrew Romanoff in the primary. Plenty of us voted for John Hickenlooper in the primary. A lot more of us voted for John Hickenlooper in the primary. It turns out he's the nominee. Love him, don't love him. No matter what, I hate to say it, he's better than Cory Gardner on every single issue you care about. I don't think there's a single thing you can honestly say with a straight face that makes John Hickenlooper anywhere near as terrible for Colorado as Cory Gardner is. And quite frankly, he's doing really, really well. In fact, right before I got on this call tonight, a new poll came out. The Giffords campaign for gun safety put out a poll through Public Policy Polling, who are a very, very good pollster that we at Progress Now have used in the past to determine people's stances on issues and whatnot. Hickenlooper's up 9 against Cory Gardner. That's really, really good. I'm going to take this link to this poll and drop it in the chat if you want to dig into it. It was a gun safety survey, you know, but 51% of respondents said they were going to vote for John Hickenlooper, and 42% said Cory Gardner, 7% not sure. If Cory wins every single one of those undecided voters, which is super duper unlikely, he still loses. So we're in good shape, but they're not going to take this one lying down. Remember, Donald Trump and everybody in Washington, D.C. who supports him are trying as hard as they can to make it impossible to vote. Luckily, here in Colorado, we have the best voting system in the entire country because of Democratic majorities in the state legislature. In 2013, right after we had the House and the Senate and John Hickenlooper as governor, we passed this thing called House Bill 1303, which was the Colorado Voter Modernization Act. What that did was it made sure every single person who's registered to vote and eligible to vote in Colorado got a mail ballot. It created a system in which you could either put that thing in the mail or go and drop it off at a Dropbox location anywhere in your county, or you could even go and vote in person if you didn't want to do this newfangled thing and you really preferred the old school precinct voting. That's fine. Now we kind of look like geniuses because you see what happened in places like Wisconsin over the primary. It was a disaster. People got sick. It was not safe to vote, if you can believe that. Now it is absolutely safe to vote in Colorado because you are able to take your ballot, fill it out at home, and make sure. Thank you, Peggy. Sorry, I put that in the chat to you instead of everybody. I appreciate that. Go look at that poll. It's actually really encouraging. It talks about background checks and how gun safety is a really important issue. These are Colorado voters who were asked these questions. The game is not just Cory Gardner, even though like he is one of the most loathsome Trump-supporting sycophants that we have in the U.S. Senate. The game is also Mitch McConnell. We cannot take the U.S. Senate if Cory Gardner is still in there. Mitch McConnell will continue to be the majority leader if Cory Gardner is still in there. The road to the majority in the U.S. Senate, no matter how progressive or conservative or whatever the candidates in various states are or aren't, goes right through Colorado. We have to win Colorado, Arizona, Maine, North Carolina. I hate to say it, but we're probably going to lose Doug Jones in Alabama. That's just a simple mathematical fact. If Roy Moore were on the ballot again, we'd have a fighting chance at it. But unfortunately, they got themselves a football coach. And you know anything about Alabama, they like themselves some football down there. So say goodbye to Doug. He's been amazing, but we got to get John Hickenlooper elected. We got to win Mark Kelly's race in Arizona. Got to get rid of Collins up in Maine. Got to get Cal Cunningham elected in North Carolina. Get rid of Tom Tillis. And then a bunch of other seats are in play that really, really shouldn't be. Montana is totally in play, our neighbors to the north. Steve Bullock, who's the current Democratic governor in a state that Trump won by like 16 points, is running against Steve Daines, another guy who Cory Gardner teamed up with to steal a bill, quite frankly, from John Lewis, God rest his soul, of all people, the Great American Outdoors Act, which protected the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Cory Gardner spent the last 4 years of his life in the U.S. Senate blocking funding for the LWCF so that when it came up again in an election year, he could steal the bill and take credit for it. That is exactly what happened. Now, I don't know if you saw this news last week, Cory was getting wailed on pre-existing conditions because he has voted over 9 times for every repeal of the Affordable Care Act and every BS thing that they brought to try and repeal Obamacare or dismantle the ACA. sign on, that lawsuit they got going against Texas. Every single thing the Republicans have tried to get rid of the ACA, every one of those hurts people with pre-existing conditions like me. I have this really super fun autoimmune disease where if I don't get this crazy treatment every 8 weeks, someone comes to my house and like sticks a needle in my arm and gives me like a crazy infusion, I do not do very well because insurance companies are forced to cover me because of the ACA. I spend my entire deductible on the first of the year every year, and then I can get treatment. I am incredibly expensive to treat. Insurance companies would much rather not have to pay for these really expensive drugs that let me live the life that I do. If Cory Gardner gets his way, people like me with pre-existing conditions, gone. Did you know that every single woman on the planet has a pre-existing condition? Being a woman in this country is actually a pre-existing condition. He filed a bill last week that is 117 words long. I'm not kidding, I counted every one of them. Called the Protecting People with Pre-Existing Conditions Act. It is a fig leaf. It is not worth the paper it is printed on. It is BS and it is garbage. And it is designed for him to be able to stop these TV attacks that are coming after him because he knows he's bad on this issue. He knows he's weak on this issue. So I don't know if you remember the 2014 campaign. He did the exact same thing. So he was getting hit for opposing, for signing on to this federal anti-abortion personhood bill that would have actually banned common forms of birth control, because if any time a fertilized egg failed to implant because of a drug, that was considered a criminal abortion, and you could go to jail for taking birth control. He was getting wailed on for that one too. So he pulled a bill, or he promised, he didn't even pull a bill back then because he was just in the house. He promised that he would get over-the-counter birth control. He had an ad about it, had a fake town hall meeting. Guy hasn't had a real town hall meeting in a long time either. And pretended like he was going to do this. Well, guess what? He was in the Senate for 6 years. And just last year, him and Joni Ernst, who's another endangered Republican up for re-election, this time in Iowa, pulled a bill title called the Over-the-Counter Birth Control Act, right? Guess where that bill went? Absolutely nowhere. He has no intention of passing this. He has no intention of making this law. He just pulled it so he could run an ad on it and fight back against the attacks that he knows he's weak on. Same thing is happening with his pre-existing conditions bill. So I can't say it enough. This election cannot be more important. It's going to be up to every one of us to make sure that we're working our tails off for Sally and Matt and John Hickenlooper too, because it really, really, really matters that we get rid of Cory Gardner and we get rid of Mitch McConnell so that Joe Biden actually has a majority to work with in the Senate. Because if they hang on to the Senate, they'll do the same thing they did to Barack Obama for the last couple of years. If, Ruth Bader Ginsburg decides to retire, we need to protect her at all costs. If other Supreme Court seats open up, 1 out of every 3 federal judges in the entire country right now is a Trump appointee. That is permanent damage that is done to our republic that we cannot undo. But what we have to do is make sure that we have a Senate that is actually following the rules and not just corrupt and rigged and trying to prevent people like Merrick Garland, who, quite frankly, if you look at him and look at a guy like Neil Gorsuch, they served on the DC Circuit Court at the same time. They really didn't have too much not in common with each other. I mean, Gorsuch was a little less good on abortion rights, and Garland was a little more vocally in support of them. But besides that, like, they were basically very similar judges, but it was all about power and loyalty to Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell. So it is critically important that we do everything we can to win up and down the ticket, but especially flip the U.S. Senate, because this is not going to be an easy race by any stretch of the imagination. They are doing everything they possibly can, from decommissioning sorting machines at the post office to lying about how mail-in balloting works. We know how mail-in balloting works. Every single one of you have voted in a mail ballot election in Colorado if you've ever cast a ballot here since 2014. It's safe, it's secure, it's amazing because you get to spend as much time as you want researching all the issues and all the candidates and filling out this year is going to be a 2-page ballot, I'm pretty sure, and making sure that you're making the right decision. So speaking of that 2-page ballot, I will pause in case anybody has a question about the Senate race or anything else I've said so far, but I do want to get into the ballot initiatives in the next 10 minutes we've got here.
Yeah, this is Ian Wally. How can we counteract these unethical Republican ads against Hickenlooper?
So that's a great question, and great name also, obviously. So what Ian's talking about are the ads that are coming up against John Hickenlooper, where if you go on YouTube or turn on television or anything, they are just all over the place. They're calling him corrupt. They're calling him a monster. They're saying that he's taken money from polluters. First of all, they're all lies or distortions at best. Most of them are just outright lies. And second of all, here's the good news. John Hickenlooper was the mayor of Denver for 8 years, and he was the governor of Colorado for 8 years. If he was some kind of like evil, corrupt monster, we probably would have heard about it at some point during that 16-year period. And this poll that I just showed you from Giffords is actually very much in line with every poll I've seen on this issue, on this race from last September when he got into the race until right now, or sorry, last August when he got into the race till right now. The numbers really haven't moved that much. So it's a desperate attack. It's definitely something that they think is gonna, it's the only path forward, right? They wouldn't be throwing these disgusting slime ball attacks at him if they didn't think it would move the needle. But the truth is that he's over the threshold. When I say that, I mean he's already got 51% and higher in the polling. And I think that voters know this guy and love him or hate him. Most of the time when progressives don't like John Hickenlooper, it's because he's not sort of progressive enough on environmental issues and things like that. He's definitely come a long way on those things since he was first governor. Like I've seen that firsthand, the transformation that he's taken on that is really, really impressive to me, because I think you can be wrong, but I also think you can learn. And I think that matters a lot more than like where you were at first. Where you end up and how you'll vote matters to me quite a bit. I'm like a Medicare for all, Green New Deal, like lefty, lefty, lefty. And yeah, it'll be our job if Hickenlooper wins that to go and make sure that we hold his feet to the fire and make sure that he does absolutely everything. Patty says that his website says he supports a carbon tax, but not banning fracking. Yeah. So now it'll be up to us to make sure that if the carbon tax passes, great, what's the next step? How can we move to 100% renewable energy as quickly as possible? It's really, really, really important. Carbon tax will change the economics, absolutely, but you move it, you know, some people believe in incremental change and some people want a revolution. I think 9 times out of 10, it happens somewhere in the middle, and it's just going to be up to us because let's face it, John Hickenlooper will take the meeting, come to the Broomfield County Dems, listen to us, hear us out and talk to us. Cory Gardner will not. I'd rather have somebody in office with whom we can get an audience and get an argument who shares our values than somebody who is just in there for Donald Trump and himself. That's just me. But at the end of the day, I don't think these attacks are going to work, Ian, to your question, because I think that voters know this guy. He's got an incredibly high name ID. His favorables are pretty much stable where they stand, and they're going to throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at him. I just don't think it's going to work. But that doesn't mean that we can take it for granted. It means we have to do every single thing we possibly can to get him elected, and then like Patty's writing in the chat, hold his feet to the fire and make sure that he represents us well when he actually gets elected. So, the best thing we can do, get on the text machine, get on phones, talk to voters, talk to your neighbors, make sure you and your whole family votes and votes up and down the ticket, because you're not going to be able to fight back against $10 million in lies and distortions as one person. Hickenlooper's campaign is raising a ton of money and they're going up on the air, and the attacks against Gardner are clearly working too. What's our power is making sure that everybody in our community votes and votes the right way. That's a great question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, great answer. I'm going to try and push you to ballot initiatives because I think you've got 8 initiatives in 10 minutes, and I don't think you have one of those auctioneer sort of voices where you can, so let's go.
I mean, I am from Jersey, so I talk pretty fast, but I try to keep, Brittany calls it the Colorado level. I try and keep it like somewhere in this speed. So, all right, the thing, there's a lot of them. And like I said, one of them just qualified today. So I'm just going to run down the list real quick. One of the ones that concerns me the very most is this thing that a so-called 22-week abortion ban. It's a gigantic problem. It's a backdoor ban on abortions. It criminalizes a medical procedure. Colorado, believe it or not, is actually one of the places in the country where you can have abortions pretty late in pregnancy. And the reason why that's important is because very, 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 very often, almost every single time with incredibly few, almost no exceptions, there is something horribly wrong with the pregnancy that is absolutely wanted, that has been planned, we just had a baby 7 months ago. If something went wrong with this pregnancy, I have no idea the heartbreak that it would have brought to my family, to my wife and me. We have this amazing little baby. He is the coolest, cutest thing in the entire world, but we were able to plan our family. Like, we both have careers. Like, Brittany's in the Senate, I run this organization. If we weren't able to plan our own family, like, who knows where our lives would have gone. But if something was wrong with the pregnancy, we absolutely needed to have that medical option to make sure that something horrible didn't happen to him or her. This takes that choice away. It criminalizes doctors in the middle of a pandemic, which is one of the craziest things I've ever heard of in my entire life. And it is part of a national strategy from right-wing anti-abortion zealots who want to ban abortion, every single one, including in cases of rape and incest. By the way, this has no protections for people who are victims of rape and incest built into this ballot initiative. And it is a sneaky, deceptive, backdoor ban on abortion. Here's the problem. Every time they've run a personhood initiative, which is the previous abortion ban attempts they've had, we've defeated those things 3-1. That was easy for Colorado voters to decide. This one is trickier because it sounds like a compromise. That's how they're talking about it. It sounds almost reasonable. The second you scratch the surface, you understand that it is completely unreasonable, and it puts politicians and government in the middle of a private medical decision that should have only the patient, the physician, and their faith leaders involved in. Absolutely no government or politician belongs in this decision. So this thing is really, really, really dangerous. It's Proposition 115, and everyone here, I am strongly encouraging a no vote on this because it is just a foot in the door so they can outright ban all abortion. You're going to hear about this from CERC next week, so I'm not going to get into the citizen requirement for voting thing, but I did want to answer a point that Peggy made before that I think is kind of interesting. I thought it was a turnout tool as well. It's like, oh, they're going to get all the hateful bigots out with this thing. But I can't figure out if there's one voter on the planet who would vote for this and not also vote for Donald Trump. So that's where I got confused about this too, because it was like, that seems like the Venn diagram is a circle. And I have no idea why they would push this if Donald Trump is basically like a human being version of this ballot initiative. So I'm pretty perplexed about it. I just know you have to vote no. A side effect of it is that it actually unwinds something that we passed in the legislature a couple of years ago that allows 17-year-olds to vote in primaries as long as they are able to vote in the general, because they will turn 18 between now and then. This undoes that, which I think is just an annoying side effect. There's a reintroduction of the gray wolf. I know a little bit about this. There's a great book called American Wolf that you should read if you're interested in learning more about it. And that's how I got educated. But there's a broken chain from Alaska to the Gulf of Mexico when it comes to the gray wolf habitat. The break in that chain is the state of Colorado. Every other state along that line, including Canada, has in some way, shape, or form reintroduced or created a habitat for the gray wolf. We're the only ones who have not. Environmentalists like this, ranchers do not. It's going to be like an urban, suburban, rural thing. I don't think it has a massive policy implications, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm a yes on this personally, but I think just do your own research. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is another incredibly important one, in my opinion. What happened was Colorado has another crazy law that allows citizens to create petitions for any law that the legislature passed and put it to the voters if they get enough signatures. Well, the folks on the right, including Cory Gardner's campaign, actually funded a bunch of money, gave a bunch of money to the effort to put this thing on the ballot to make sure. So we say one person, one vote. Why should a vote in Wyoming count 300% more than a vote in Colorado? I have no idea. I think that's crazy. The two times in recent memory that the Electoral College went a different way from the popular vote were the two worst presidents of my lifetime, George W. Bush and Donald Trump. So as far as I'm concerned, we have the internet. Candidates are no longer traveling by horse and buggy or whistle-stop tours on a train. We need a national popular vote. Every other country looks at us like this is insane. And this time, Donald Trump could lose the popular vote by 5 to 7 million and still win if he wins the Electoral College. I think that is unbelievable and unforgivable. So we should absolutely vote yes on the national popular vote. It's kind of confusing because it's a repeal. And if you think about it, don't you want to vote no on the repeal? No. The way that it works is you put the law itself up for the vote of the voters, and the voters decide, yes, we want national popular vote, or no, we do not. I think progressives should vote yes on that. There's a very, very stupid, dangerous tax cut that's on the ballot. Colorado, as you probably know, has a flat tax rate of 4.63%, which makes us one of the lowest in the country. Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers, the right wing, all these horrible out-of-state special interests run by billionaires are using us as a little experimental laboratory, and they want to slash the income tax rate from 4.63 to 4.55. Well, that doesn't sound like too much, does it? Well, here's the problem. If you're a normal income earner, somewhere in the $50,000 to $75,000 a year category for a family of four, that means you get about 40 to 60 bucks back a year. What does it do to the state budget? $170 million hole blown right into it. Where does that money come from? $170 million, turns out, is the exact same amount of money that the brand new shiny kindergarten program that the General Assembly passed last year cost. So they're going to have to choose. If this thing passes, take $170 million out of Medicaid, higher ed, K-12, or kindergarten. Where's it going to come from? I think this is horrible.
I thought I read that Polis had endorsed that. Did Polis endorse
it? Unfortunately, that was a little bit of media spin. He didn't endorse it. What he didn't do was oppose it. So right now there's a lot of us asking him out loud, very loudly, to come out and oppose this because we think it's definitely dangerous. What he said was he tried to avoid answering the question. And he said, well, I think Coloradans could use tax relief right now, which I think is a real shame. There's something on the ballot. I only have 3 minutes left, so I really want to blow through these. That would require voters to approve these things called enterprises. Enterprises are things like the hospital provider fee and the higher ed system that are funded by fees in cash that don't count toward the Tabor limit. Colorado was already starved of resources because of Tabor and Gallagher and a lot of other reasons. If this thing passes, like, say goodbye to any kind of substantial transportation funding for the foreseeable future, probably ever. These are the same people that are bringing you the tax cut, the drown the government in the bathtub people, the all government is bad, no government is good people. We're Democrats. We don't agree with that. I think you vote no on that one. I'm going to skip bingo and raffles because I don't know too much about it, and I don't think it's like the most critical issue we're facing this year. The Gallagher Amendment and property tax assessment rates is kind of interesting. This is split. So my old boss, Dickie Lee Hullinghorst, who was the Speaker of the House when I was the Chief of Staff in the legislature a couple of years ago, she actually helped write the Gallagher Amendment in 1982. What it does is it protects people's property taxes. It says that residential rates have to stay pretty low and commercial rates are going to make up a large portion of the revenue that we get from state property taxes. The problem is that, you know, when things go well, that's great, and people's property values go up, but there's this little mechanism in law, this ratio, that ratchets down and reduces the amount of money that can be brought in for schools, basically. This doesn't increase anybody's property taxes. It freezes it at the rate it is exactly right now in time, so it won't go down, but it certainly won't go up, and it'll freeze commercial rates as well. Right now, residential property taxes make 45% of the total, and commercial makes 55%. That will stay exactly the way it is forever. It just won't recalibrate every couple of years. I actually don't know how I'm voting on this yet. I'm a little confused. There's also a nicotine and e-cigarette tax increase that I'm also confused about. I was an idiot and smoked cigarettes for 10 years, and it was the dumbest waste of time and money and health I've ever visited on myself. I am now quit for almost 7 years, and that was the best decision I ever made. But this, quite frankly, is a sales tax that mostly affects people with lower incomes. And I just have like a sort of philosophical problem with regressive sales taxes that hurt like people with lower incomes that then help out the rest of us. I think millionaires and billionaires should be paying more in taxes. I don't think people with lower incomes should be paying more in taxes. The money does go to health and education programs, so I think that's a good thing. But overall, I'm pretty confused on this one too. I think if it were a little more fair and taxed on something else, I would have been okay with it, but I might have to be a no on this one. Then there's two. One just qualified today, the Paid Family and Medical Leave Initiative that I think is absolutely critical. It's a super simple program. It creates an insurance program that takes $3 to $5 out of every worker's paycheck and puts it into a big insurance pool. If you have a family emergency or you have a new baby, you can then take up to 12 weeks of paid time off. The insurance fund replaces the wages that you would have lost, and it's not like a big tax or anything. States like New Jersey do this, Massachusetts, Washington State. It's been really successful. Weirdly enough, I'm from Jersey. My parents actually live next door to the state commissioner of labor of the state of New Jersey. And I called him up and I was like, how is this program working for you guys? It's the best thing we've ever done. Business loves it, workers love it, and it's so solvent financially that we've actually increased the benefits and decreased the amount of money that people are paying into it over time. Our model is built very closely on New Jersey's, and I think it's going to be a great thing for Colorado. We will be one of 15 states in the entire country that have it. As you probably know, we have no national paid family and medical leave policy. We have FMLA, but that does not do nearly enough. And let me tell you, I was privileged enough to work for an organization where my board gave me 3 months off to spend time with my newborn. That is the most critical time in a child's life. I didn't know I would be spending the next 4 months with him as well, and probably the next 3 months after that, God willing, we get out of this virus nonsense. But it is the most unbelievably formative, transformative period of time. And I think I don't care who you are, how much money you make, or how much money you don't make, every single person deserves to spend that time with their new kid. And finally, there's an initiative number 257 that would allow the gambling town, Central City, Blackhawk, and Cripple Creek to decide if they want to increase the bet limits or add games to the limited gaming situation that they have in those localities. So that is the big old ballot that we're going to be facing this year, plus county commissions, DAs, judges, president, U.S. Senate, congressional candidates, state Senate, state House, and local initiatives as well. I'm going to peek over here at the chat to see if I missed anything. Patty gave Ian a good scorecard from the League Conservation Voters, which is an excellent resource. And Patty also says if you want to hit file and save the chat down there, you are welcome to. I'm 2 minutes over, and I tried really hard to use my best auctioneer voice, but Peggy, was there anything you wanted me to cover that I wasn't able to?
I just want to say thank you so much. We really like your friends, and I very much appreciate you sharing this hour with us. Thank you very much.
The pleasure was truly mine. Broomfield Dems, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. I really hope the next time we see each other, we are in a room, in a rec center, in Broomfield. But if that's not possible, I will come back anytime. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real blast.